Ahoy. So, welcome to the Crypto Bro Organic Intelligence Special. I'm Dr. Bakho, PhD. Big thank you to Crypto Bro, an organic intelligence client, for fueling 3 recent live streams I did with Rena K. Crypto Bro kindly took notes on the live streams and shared them with me. I decided to make here an informal lecture of them. This will be an informal, casual, quick and dirty lecture based on Crypto Bro's notes on our live stream content. Thanks again, Crypto Bro, and here we go. I'm going to answer 4 questions. 1, how does organic intelligence work? 2, does organic intelligence avoid quote unquote root issues? 3, does organic intelligence heal trauma? 4, is organic intelligence weaker than other approaches because it's so gentle? All right. So question 1, how does organic intelligence work? On the slide, it says 5 words. These 5 words capture the essence of organic intelligence: orientation and pleasure grow capacity. So to talk through, first, you don't necessarily need to know how OI works, just that it works. I'm going to explain, but first of all, people come to me and to organic intelligence coaches in deep pain, and they get better. So you can learn for yourself through practicing orientation and pleasure. Man, this works. My symptoms go away. Life gets better. Just like when you sleep, eat, and exercise, life gets better. You may not know how sleep works exactly, or what happens during digestion exactly, or why exactly exercise helps you become happier. But you know exercise works, eating works, sleeping works. And orientation and pleasure, if you do it, you'll learn, oh, it works. Okay, so you can learn that it works without knowing how exactly. But as to the how, in essence, it works because what orientation and pleasure do is increase your capacity to process information and intensity. Information intensity including thoughts, emotions, sensory input, work, relational difficulties, doing your taxes, doing a jigsaw puzzle, just the stuff of life. You can do these things more easily and automatically to the extent you have capacity, and capacity increases by the stabilization of orientation and pleasure. And as capacity increases, symptoms go down. So this is a bit of a quick and dirty lecture because I'm reading off of notes from Crypto Bro about what I said during the live stream. I'm just being more informal rather than thinking through everything in detail and in an organized way. So there's your answer to the first question. How does organic intelligence work? Orientation and pleasure grow capacity. Question 2, does organic intelligence avoid quote unquote root issues? Why is root issues in quotes? Because one thing we discussed, Rena and I, the other organic intelligence coach I do the live streams with, that there's a question of what exactly does root issue mean. The concept is thrown around quite a bit, and one could think about what it means exactly, but just going with the concept, no. The answer here is no. According to organic intelligence, the root issue is insufficient capacity. Let me read the rest of the slide, then I'll talk through. I.e., in other words, insufficient orientation and pleasure. And there are 3 other formulations or ways of understanding insufficient orientation and pleasure that I just basically verbalized but didn't explain in the live streams. The first is the what's wrong attention, WWA. It's a condition in which your attention is addicted to what's wrong, whether what's wrong is factual or not factual. The second one is addiction to intensity, characterized by your attention being hostaged by internal experience and unable to connect to the environment. And third is the status quo attractor, acronymized as SQA. which refers to the tendency of your internal experience, your thoughts, your images, and your feelings, including both emotions and sensations, to guide you in directions, in life directions that will keep your capacity the same instead of growing it. Now, all of these three things could get a lot more lecturing. I mentioned them briefly in the live streams, and I'm just pinging them here, but I'm not going to explain them. So to talk through this slide a bit, uh, some might say organic intelligence avoids root issues because we're focused on connecting to the environment and on pleasure. And they would say, well, the root issue is, your deeper stuff, your trauma, your deep core beliefs, or what happened to you when you were younger. Those are the root issues that need to be addressed. And according to organic intelligence, there's something way deeper, which is whether you have the capacity to process whatever you're trying to process. That is the root issue. So the root issue, according to organic intelligence, is insufficient capacity, and organic intelligence directly tackles the root issue. Okay, nice. Third, does organic intelligence heal trauma? All right, the slide says organic intelligence does not claim to heal trauma, not because it doesn't resolve symptoms related to trauma, but because it wants to focus on what resolves the symptoms, orientation, and pleasure. So here's some of what I said in the live stream. Thanks again, CryptoBro, for the notes. Stabilizing of orientation and pleasure fundamentally shifts the whole experience and valence of working with that glob. Okay, during the live streams, I use the phrase glob or glob of stuff to refer to trauma. Why do I use that? Because it's quite clear. It connotes just you have a bunch of stuff going on, whatever the symptoms are, depression, anxiety, panic attacks, nightmares. There's a glob of stuff. So I just use that term. I think it's pretty cool, simple, easily understood term. And I was trying to get away from there was discussion of, oh, is it energetic residue? What does that mean? Is it incomplete survival responses? What does that mean? Is that woo-woo? Is that a real thing? Is that a technical thing? Can you validate those phenomena that you're putting forward? Incomplete survival responses. And so I offered glob of issues because you can know that there's stuff that you're trying to deal with without worrying about more technical validations or explorations of what constitutes that stuff or what is underneath that stuff in the biology, in the neurobiology, all that stuff. You just have stuff. You have a glob of issues. And from the notes, stabilizing of orientation and pleasure fundamentally shifts the whole experience and valence of working with that glob. Valence here refers to the quality of whether what you're experiencing is positive, neutral, or negative, or pleasurable, neutral, or painful. That's a simple way to explain valence right now. And the claim here is that what you're trying to work with, the glob of stuff, inorganic intelligence, you experience it very differently, less intensely, and actually more pleasurably in positive valence because of how OI works. That's another reason we're trying to get away from referring to the trauma, because what you're experiencing is often inorganic intelligence is very different from the symptoms you associate with your trauma. What you're experiencing is pleasure. When you establish conditions of orientation and pleasure, what arises in your biology and in your experience in session is often in positive valence, in pleasure, and that's what we work with. Continuing with the notes, we're working with the glob, but we're working with it in a way your biology can process more easily, which allows us to go deeper because we're working within threshold level of intensity. So inorganic intelligence, by working in pleasure, we're working within threshold. Threshold here very quickly refers to what your biology and you can process easily. And if you're in orientation and in pleasure, that means what you're processing can be processed easily. So because we're processing the glob within threshold, we're processing it in pleasure. Okay, so Crypto Bro, so in the live stream, I presented objections against a sentiment of people who are criticizing criticizing organic intelligence. They may say, you organic intelligence people, you guys are superficial, you're ignoring what's wrong, you're not healing trauma with all your focus on orientation and pleasure. You're superficial, you're ignoring what's wrong, you're not healing trauma. And I said, it's so opposite. The way to do the deepest processing and healing is to do it through an optimal level of intensity, which is that level of intensity secured by the stabilization of orientation and pleasure. And that was a pivotal moment, and Rena asked if I could repeat it. So here was my repetition. The way to do the deepest possible healing is to handle whatever is coming up for you at the optimal level of intensity. And that, according to organic intelligence, is that level which is stabilized by orientation and pleasure. As the biology becomes increasingly stabilized in orientation and pleasure, its capacity increases. And as its capacity increases, there may be a touching upon moments or emotions or thoughts that in the past would have felt exceedingly intense, unpleasant, distressing. When you make contact with these memories, but they're at the level of threshold the biology can handle, then it doesn't feel necessarily unpleasant. And there's a way of experiencing it that is not so intense. Sitting in sensation and feeling, sitting in sensation, it may be here that Rena is talking, so just so you know, sitting, I don't remember exactly what of the notes I said and what of the notes Rena said sometimes. So sitting in sensation and feeling these kinds of things is just too intense for the system, and it actually reinforces it. Feeling might aggravate and reinforce it. Actually feeling something else, low intensity pleasure plus orientation, is the way to reduce the reinforcement of that glob. By focusing on something other than that glob, it takes intensity away from that glob, and that's how you're addressing it. Also, so one question CryptoBro asked when he gave us comments on in the live stream: does the focus on orientation and pleasure create trait level change? Let me repeat that. Does the focus on orientation and pleasure create trait level change, as opposed to just change of states temporarily, but trait level? Yes. It's not instant. There is some level of repetition as the brain needs to develop new networks. The string of state changes creates a trait difference. When you practice it, it grows like coral. I think coral was me, not Rana, but it's an often an analogy to how we work. It grows, it's very stable and solid. It grows like coral, the stabilization of orientation and pleasure. Okay, and also, so here I'm replying. So CryptoBro raised a thought. Well, don't the feel your pain to heal, the feel it to heal it models, what if they work? Sometimes they work. What does organic intelligence have to say to that? One point I made was this: in the case of feel it to heal it, suppose it does work, which it can work. Your biology may be able to quote unquote metabolize it. There is a price, though. The price is that you got habituated to the notion that in order to feel better, you have to feel worse first. Okay, so the price of feeling it to heal it working is that you're more accustomed to discomfort, and in going forward in the future, you will more easily gravitate to discomfort, and that's a pretty high opportunity cost, even if feel it to heal it works. All right. 4. Is organic intelligence weaker than other approaches because it's so gentle? So my slide content is so opposite. Do no harm is the way to get something even better than symptom resolution: increase in capacity for enjoyment. Okay, so I thank you, CryptoBro, again for your notes. I'm going to read from what you wrote from what I said. One assumption people may have is that conventional approaches are like Western medicine, very powerful, but strong potential for side effects. And OI is like herbs, low side effect profile, but low capacity for change too. People won't believe you can have something as powerful, if not more powerful, that that is not harmful like conventional therapy / Western medicine. OI is not the weakling, less side effect, but less effective approach. It's not that. Okay. Then I move into elaborating the idea that resolving the trauma symptoms or resolving the glob is actually not the end game, even though I was willing to talk in terms of resolving the glob in earlier parts of the live stream. So here's Crypto Bros notes on what I said. A common ground between OI and other approaches like SE that I was willing to entertain for present purposes, for earlier purposes, was there's a glob of stuff and it's painful and you want it resolved. All right. However, for OI, the resolution of that glob is actually a small part of the equation. Symptom resolution is just one aspect of something more powerful, which is capacity growth. OI is doing something more profound in healing trauma or symptoms relating to trauma. It's growing capacity. The resolution of trauma and associated symptoms happens with capacity increase. But more importantly, with capacity increase, you can get more done in life and with more pleasure and happiness. So OI is not some flaccid weakling compared to the Western medicine of conventional therapy. It's something more powerful and safer and pleasurable. There's a belief that you can't have something for nothing and that it's too good to be true. But OI is seriously saying the resolution of symptoms associated with trauma is just one benefit of a larger benefit, which is capacity increase, which increases how much happiness you could have in life. And this happens through feeling better. It is the grammar kind of falls apart in the notes, but I'm just going to keep is low intensity and it's more potent than okay. Feeling better. All right. Feeling better is low intensity and is more potent than feel it to heal it. Right. Also, OI doesn't say never feel it to heal it. There are situations where you have to feel it to heal it because that's what your biology wants to do. There's a timing for this, though. I believe Rena is speaking now, or I'm not, maybe. Sitting with the glob in phase one. For people who are new to OI, you don't know what phase one is. It just means you're suffering a lot, but you can look into, let me just move on. I'm just sitting with the glob in phase one can actually just further reinforce the glob. Phase one is characterized by high chaoticness. Part of orientation and pleasure is that the biology becomes more regular. The bipolar oscillation between activation and deactivation, that becomes more regular. As that happens, sure enough, things will arise. But now there is the necessary capacity to process it if the biology chooses to present it. As the biology organizes, it may want to be with some of those intense states, but it's not feeling intense. That's the difference. And when it does so with less angst for less time. That's definitely Rena. I don't say angst. It's not that we never get in touch with these things. It just happens in a more organized fashion. And oftentimes we don't have to deal with it at all. Essentially, you need capacity if you're going to feel stuff. Stability before I suspect the paragraph I'm reading right now, it may be actually Crypto Bro adding his own thoughts to the live to his notes to me. So assuming essentially you need capacity if you're going to feel stuff, stability before intensity. It's probably why I felt more hypervigilant for like months after coming back from the Zen retreat. Some people would regard it as good that the increased hypervigilance was me bringing stuff up to be processed, but to be honest, bringing stuff up to be processed versus just feeling worse because you've superseded your threshold present because you've superseded your threshold present in exactly the same way, laughing my ass off. So maybe Crypto Bro is warming more to organic intelligence. Okay, back to me, and this is I think this is my final point in the live stream. Also, a major aspect of the organic in OI is the organic, that which arises from the biology, not top-down planning with client and practitioner. The biology has its own sequencing and timing. Yes. So in organic intelligence, we're focusing on orientation and pleasure, low intensity, and this is done not through top-down planning with client and practitioner, but through free association, unstructured, non-agenda driven conversation, because the biology has its own sequencing and timing. And the only way to know its sequencing and timing is through free association conversation, which promotes lower intensity, orientation, and pleasure, so that the biology can furnish through thought, feeling, and image what its next step is in increasing capacity and therefore resolving the symptoms of trauma and increasing capacity to process information and enjoy life more. All right. Thank you again, Crypto Bro. I hope you've all enjoyed and gotten something from this kind of impromptu, casual, quick and dirty lecture. This is the Crypto Bro special on organic intelligence.